She pretended to love him. But he was too kind, too innocent to suspect a thing. What started as a game quickly turned into a trap of lies, manipulation, and heartbreak. One young girl, one wealthy, gentle billionaire, and a secret that could destroy everything. Who will win when deceit meets pure heart? Stay with me, because this story will make your jaw drop. Lily had a plan, a dangerous, thrilling plan. On the surface, she was charming, sweet, the kind of girl anyone would trust. But underneath, she was hiding a secret. Andre, the billionaire, was nothing like anyone she had ever met. Gentle, kind, surprisingly innocent despite his massive wealth. He had a heart that could melt steel. She told herself it was just a game, just a harmless act of pretending to fall in love. But from the moment their eyes met in that grand, sunlit lobby, something strange began to stir in her. Andre laughed at the smallest of jokes, listened like every word she said mattered, and offered kindness that felt almost unreal. Lily started small, little gestures, flirty smiles, subtle compliments. Andre responded with warmth, not suspicion. Every conversation, every laugh made her act feel easier, but also heavier. Because the truth was, Andre wasn't just any billionaire. He was sharp, intuitive in ways she didn't expect. And the more she played, the more tangled she became in her own lies. But the game was far from over. Each night, Lily would lie awake, heart pounding, wondering if he saw through her. Could someone so kind really be blind to deception? Or was he secretly testing her, seeing how far she'd go? And then came the moment that changed everything. A single gesture, a look in his eyes, that made Lily freeze. Andre's innocence wasn't stupidity. He knew something she hadn't planned for. And now Lily had to decide, keep pretending and risk losing herself, or confront the truth and face a heartbreak she hadn't expected. Would Lily's game finally unravel? Could she keep her secret when the one person she was pretending to love might see straight through her? Stay tuned, because this is a story where every smile hides a motive. Every gesture carries a weight, and one innocent billionaire could change everything. Andre had always been the kind of man people remembered, not because he flaunted his wealth or status, but because of his quiet, genuine warmth. Every morning, he walked through the glass doors of his office, briefcase in hand, nodding politely to the security guard, greeting the receptionist with a smile that could make anyone feel seen. Andre's life was calm, ordered, predictable in a way that felt comforting. He loved the soft hum of city life outside his high-rise apartment, the aroma of fresh coffee in his favorite cafe, and the simple Sunday dinners he shared with a small circle of friends who had known him since college. Growing up, Andre had learned early on the power of kindness. His parents had instilled in him the importance of integrity and empathy, teaching him to rise above small-mindedness. He carried that through life, even when people judged him for the color of his skin or whispered assumptions about his background. Over the years, he had grown used to polite nods masking unspoken prejudice, smiles hiding hesitation. But he never let it harden him. He believed in the good in people, in second chances, in fairness. Life had been straightforward, peaceful even, until Lily arrived. Lily was young, ambitious, radiant, someone who could light up a room without trying. She was ambitious, but she carried a restless energy that made her impossible to ignore. In the first weeks of knowing her, Andre felt a rare spark of curiosity, a sense that something new was coming into his life. But life has a way of testing even the kindest hearts. Andre's calm world, built carefully with patience and perseverance, had subtle cracks that few could see. The city he loved so much, its cafes, streets, and parks, was also a place where assumptions ran deep, where some eyes lingered too long, where whispers followed him in elevators, in high-end restaurants, in the halls of his office. He had navigated them before with grace, but the upcoming storm would be different. Andre didn't know it yet, but the moments of quiet judgment, the sideways glances, the barely audible comments would soon escalate. Society's prejudice, subtle but persistent, was about to collide with his life in a way that would challenge his trust, his patience, and the very kindness that defined him. As he sipped his morning coffee one Thursday, watching the city wake around him, there was no hint of what was coming. No clue that the very smiles and laughter he had welcomed would soon become tools for manipulation. And that his innocence, his gentle nature, would be tested in ways he never imagined. Andre had always believed that hard work and decency would shield him from the worst of the world. But the city was about to prove him wrong. The first hint came subtly, a lingering look at a business meeting, an offhand comment masked as a joke. He brushed it off at first, telling himself it was just a moment, just ignorance. But ignorance has a way of growing. It started with the smallest things. At a gala he attended for a charity he had supported for years, Andre noticed the whispers behind his back. A young assistant hesitated when serving him wine. A fellow guest made a passing remark about how surprising it is to see someone like him at this kind of event. He forced a smile, tried to ignore it, but the words clung to him like smoke, impossible to shake. Then came Lily. She had been acting sweet, attentive and slightly mysterious, keeping him captivated. But even with her, Andre began to notice subtle shifts. Invitations that had once been extended casually now arrived reluctantly, or didn't arrive at all. In meetings where he had once been welcomed with respect, doors seemed to close just a little faster. Smiles that once felt genuine became faint and awkward. One afternoon he experienced it directly. He had been scheduled to present an important proposal to a high-profile investor. Andre had prepared meticulously, anticipating every question, every concern. As he stepped into the room, he noticed something immediately: the cold stares, the barely concealed smirks. A junior associate, someone he had mentored, looked away nervously. And the investor, a man known for fairness and professionalism, barely hid his disdain. "You don't really belong here, do you?" The investor asked casually, almost conversationally, though the words carried a weight that made Andre's chest tighten. Silence fell. Andre's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, searching for words that wouldn't escalate tension. But the room was already closing in on him. He walked out without presenting. Humiliation burned like fire, but worse was the sinking realization that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, a society's subtle, pervasive prejudice that didn't need to shout to wound. From there, it only escalated. Invitations vanished. Emails went unanswered. Even in spaces he once considered safe, Andre felt the sting of systemic rejection. At a high-end restaurant where he had hosted friends countless times, a manager quietly asked him to wait outside until a table opens. Outside, he waited in the chilly evening air, the laughter from inside like a taunt. A few feet away, Lily was seated at a table he had reserved for the two of them, laughing at something her friends had said, seemingly oblivious to the injustice unfolding. Andre's frustration grew, but so did his resolve. He refused to let them see him falter. Every slight, every public humiliation became fuel for his determination, yet every encounter left scars that no amount of composure could erase. Then came the moment that truly shook him. A video surfaced on social media. In a crowded mall, someone had captured Andre in a confrontation he didn't even know had escalated. A store clerk accused him of theft. He tried to explain calmly, showing receipts, identification, anything to prove his innocence. The crowd jeered. Phones recorded every movement, every word taken out of context. The video went viral, sparking comments that questioned his integrity, mocked his accent, his skin, his very presence. Andre felt the sting of helplessness. For the first time, the world he had trusted seemed to conspire against him. Even Lily's actions became harder to interpret. Her flirtations, her attentions, they were a shield or a trap. Each smile felt like a puzzle he couldn't solve, a test he hadn't agreed to take. And yet, despite it all, Andre refused to bow. The tension became a crucible. Every slight, every rejection, every whisper of prejudice forged a fire in him. He began to watch, to listen, to anticipate. He would not be blindsided again, but the question lingered, a shadow over his every move. Who was truly against him, and who would be his ally when the world revealed its darker face? The city had tested him, society had humiliated him, and Lily's intentions remained a mystery. And then came the moment that would push everything to the breaking point. Andre had endured whispers, stares, and subtle prejudice for years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The city had grown colder, more judgmental, as if every sidewalk, every cafe, every boardroom were conspiring to remind him that he didn't belong. And now, It had escalated to a point where discretion, patience, and polite restraint were no longer enough. It happened on a Thursday evening. Andre had been invited to a prestigious gala, a chance to pitch a new philanthropic initiative, one that could change thousands of lives. He arrived dressed sharply, calm but alert, carrying the weight of every slight he had endured over the past months. The room sparkled with chandeliers, laughter, and the soft clinking of glasses, but Andre noticed the cold calculation behind some of those smiles. He knew eyes would follow him, judge him, and perhaps even doubt his right to be there. The first sign came subtly. A waiter approached him, hesitating slightly before offering service, as though unsure if he belonged. Andre's lips tightened, but he maintained his composure. Then a fellow guest, a prominent business figure, made a remark just loud enough for others to hear. "Well, I didn't expect him to be part of this circle." Andre froze, heart pounding, but forced a smile. He had faced insults before, but this public, pointed dismissal was different. It ignited a fire in him, anger wrapped in hurt, hurt wrapped in indignation. Every injustice he had endured, every whispered doubt about his worth, surged back with violent clarity. Then came Lily. She entered the room, radiant as ever, her presence both comforting and confusing. She smiled at Andre, but there was something unreadable in her eyes, a glint that made him wonder whether her kindness had always been genuine or another layer in a web of manipulation. Andre's phone buzzed. He glanced down. Another viral post. A video had surfaced showing him confronting a security guard weeks ago, taken completely out of context. The comments were cruel, mocking, full of thinly veiled racial slurs. People he had once considered friends, colleagues, even clients, were now sharing, liking, commenting. Andre felt his chest tighten, the familiar sting of humiliation threatening to crush his resolve. For a moment, he considered walking away, letting the world think what it wanted. But then something shifted. The fire in his chest became clarity. He would no longer be a passive victim, a target of whispers and social media cruelty. He would fight, not with violence, but with the courage and dignity that had always defined him. Andre stepped forward. His voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the chatter of the room. "I don't need anyone to validate my worth. I don't need approval to do good in this world. My work, my intentions, and my integrity speak for themselves. And if you can't see that, the problem lies with your prejudice, not with me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stared in shock, others in admiration. And there, in the middle of the glittering room, Andre realized he was no longer the quiet, polite man who endured injustice silently. He was someone who could stand tall, even in the face of ridicule, even when the world tried to tear him down. But then Lily approached, her expression unreadable. Andre's heart skipped. Would she condemn him, applaud him, or betray him? His eyes met hers, searching for truth in a room full of deception. Before she could speak, another commotion erupted. One of the gala's influential guests had whispered something inflammatory, and suddenly a debate ignited. The crowd split, tensions escalated, and Andre was surrounded by judgment, skepticism, and barely disguised hostility. And in that moment, a realization hit him like a punch. This fight wasn't just about one insult, one video, or one night. It was about every lie, every stereotype, every moment society had tried to use to diminish him. And now, standing in the center of it all, he faced a choice. Remain silent under the weight of injustice, or speak, act, and reclaim his dignity, no matter the cost. Andre took a deep breath, heart racing, and stepped further into the spotlight. The world was watching. The moment had arrived. And just as he opened his mouth to confront the next wave of prejudice head-on, the room fell into tense silence. All eyes were fixed on him, waiting. Would he triumph in the face of systemic injustice? Or would the weight of society's cruelty finally break him? The room remained silent after Andre's courageous stand. Eyes that had been filled with judgment moments ago now lingered, some with unease, others with admiration. In that instant, the crowd became aware that the man standing before them was more than a victim of circumstance. He was a symbol of resilience, dignity, and unshakable morality. Lily's face finally broke into a complex expression. Relief? Regret? Admiration? Andre couldn't be sure. But in her eyes, he saw a flicker of truth. And for the first time, he realized that not everyone who appeared complicit was heartless. Sometimes, they were just trapped in their own perceptions. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from the gala spread in ways no one could have predicted. Social media, which had once been a weapon used against him, became a platform for support. Videos highlighting Andre's integrity, his unwavering composure, and the injustices he faced went viral. People began sharing stories of their own encounters with prejudice, inspired by his courage. The conversation shifted from mockery to reflection. Andre didn't revel in the attention. For him, the most important victories were quiet but profound. Invitations he had once been denied returned, not as handouts, but as acknowledgments of his rightful place in society. He was consulted on initiatives, philanthropic projects, and business partnerships, not because he had demanded recognition, but because people had finally seen the man behind the wealth, the man of character, compassion, and strength. Yet the journey left scars. As all battles against systemic injustice do, Andre reflected often on the subtle moments of rejection, the whispered doubts, the sideways glances, the viral video that had so maliciously misrepresented him. Those experiences were painful reminders of how deeply prejudice could wound, how easily society could weaponize ignorance against those who were innocent. But they also strengthened his resolve. Each slight became a lesson, each insult a reason to continue his work, not in spite of the world, but for it. Lily's role in all of this was equally transformative. She had entered his life with her own motives, her own ambitions, and perhaps a hint of selfishness. But witnessing Andre's courage changed her perspective. She began to understand the cost of prejudice, not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing force capable of breaking lives. Her affection for Andre grew, tempered by newfound respect and admiration. She realized that love without honesty, empathy, and understanding could never survive the weight of real-world injustice. Andre's personal life flourished in subtle, meaningful ways. He became more intentional in his relationships, seeking out connections grounded in respect rather than convenience. He mentored young professionals, particularly those who faced discrimination, teaching them not only business skills, but also the value of dignity, courage, and self-belief. Andre had learned that fighting prejudice wasn't about retaliation. It was about setting an example, embodying the principles of fairness, and lifting others along the way. The broader impact rippled outward. Communities began to recognize the insidious effects of systemic bias, the way casual judgments and subtle exclusions could erode trust and unity. Conversations about race, privilege, and morality became more than empty rhetoric. They became actions, initiatives, and programs designed to foster understanding. Andre's story was no longer just his own. It was a catalyst for reflection, change, and healing in a world too often divided by fear and assumption. And yet, the lessons were clear and enduring. Racism destroys families, divides communities, and leaves wounds that often go unseen. Prejudice weakens the social fabric, creating barriers where bridges could exist. But courage, quiet, steadfast courage, could defeat hate. Empathy and honesty could disarm suspicion and rebuild trust. And unity, once embraced, could heal even the deepest scars. In the final moments of reflection, Andre stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city stretch beneath him. The skyline glowed with the lights of 1,000 lives, each one a story of struggle, triumph, and hope. He understood now that the battles he had faced were part of a larger fight, for recognition, for equality, for humanity. He also understood that standing firm in the face of injustice wasn't just about personal victory. It was about paving the way for those who would come after him. Lily approached, her hand finding his. There were no pretenses, no games, only genuine connection forged in fire. Together, they looked out at the city, aware that the world would continue to challenge them, to test their resolve. But they also knew something vital, that with courage, empathy, and unity, even the most insidious prejudice could be confronted and overcome. As the lights shimmered across the skyline, Andre whispered to himself, not as a boast, but as a promise, I will not let hate define me. I will not let ignorance dictate my worth, and I will use every moment, every breath, to prove that kindness, courage, and integrity are stronger than the darkest prejudice. It was a victory hard-earned, a story still unfolding, and a reminder to everyone watching that the fight against racism is not just about enduring, it's about rising, speaking and transforming the world one courageous act at a time.